The time to come together was on November 5th when it counted. And all black and brown people didn't do that. All marginalized communities didn't do that.
You don't see a Haitian saying I'm African Haitian or a Jamaican saying I'm African. We try to do the right thing and acknowledge our ancestry, and now it's being used. Well, what part? Like, no, just for that, we just black Americans.
All right. When I was younger, I wanted to be well known. I wanted to be famous for something, anything. Growing up in the 90s, I saw America emerge from a time of economic prosperity with a side of Clinton destroying welfare as we know it into whatever the fuck Bush was doing. I grew up getting kicked out of school for rocking snowman shirts, dreaming about stacking enough allowance money to get some J's, and trying my best to conquer my loner tendencies enough to get a date. I got past it though, went to college, worked in ad agencies while rapping, discovered filmmaking, and transitioned to YouTube years later. I stopped desiring fame before YouTube came along because it looks like a headache. The pursuit of clout evolved into chasing impact. A year ago, my viewers started asking me to cover somebody called Tariq Nasheed, a former rapper, indie filmmaker, and YouTuber. Sound familiar? They suggested it because they knew then what I know now, that he's exploiting black pain for profit, and very much still in his clout-chasing era. Wait, before you click off the video, hear me out. What I'm about to say next is for FBAs, black people that descended from American slaves on at least one parent's side. I love y'all too much to allow this to happen to us. I say us because I'm a foundational black YouTube American. Why is that definition of FBA the official one? Because King Flex said so. Who invented the term? Again, that was K-Flex. Tariq Elite, Marcus, a lot of aliases. FBAs have gotten real inflammatory toward non-FBAs on the internet, to say the least. And we're gonna address that because I made this for you. I can roast Tariq in 5 minutes, but it's more important that we address the separation, the them versus us mentality. I understand where black American anger and exhaustion stems from. We have been under attack by America's power structure for hundreds of years. We do deserve reparations, whether monetary or otherwise. Most of the conspiracy theories Tariq and others come up with are ridiculous, but some of them are true.
So they get people like Candace Owens and they turn her into a collaborator with the white supremacist system. They elevate her to some type of spokesperson status. Candace Owens is only known for getting pushed into the limelight to talk negatively about black people.
Here's what we won't be talking about in this video. Tariq's family, his terrible rap songs, overly auto-tuned funk music, or his physical appearance. This also isn't a full review of his documentaries, but we'll touch on those. Whenever possible, I'll be citing sources in the description and on screen. I'm gonna use his own words to prove every allegation I make. I obviously can't cover everything he's ever done either. The man's been running his mouth for longer than I've been in the workforce. Here's what I'll be proving. Tariq created almost all of his fundraisers and all of his movements in an effort to enrich himself. Uses black rage and trauma to sell products. Despises women and queer people, and couldn't lead his way out of a cardboard box, much less to reparations for us. When I reached out to Tariq for a comment on this piece, he responded immediately. Called me a federal enforcement asset when I was asking questions about the shit he put on his own website. Believe it or not, I'm actually gonna start with what we agree on though. List ain't long, but there is a list. What do I have in common with Tariq? We're black Americans. We both have 2 black American parents, and we both have black American names too. His is Marcus Vincent Thomas.
And Tariq Nasheed not Jamaican?
His name is Marcus Thomas. Marcus Vincent Thomas.
Marcus Vincent Thomas, don't got a Jamaican granddaddy? Marcus Vincent Thomas?
I can't find the proof for that, but Vincent, I mean, it's a possibility.
Every guy I know named Marcus Vincent Thomas is straight off the banana boat.
No, 100%.
In Jamaica.
A lot of y'all already knew that, but I found it out in this court document from when he was sued for defamation 2 years ago by Taharka Bey, a social media personality he called a sex offender on YouTube after finding alleged proof that the court threw out.
We're the Taharka Bay supporters. This ass domestic violence, abusive ass pervert who's a sex offender who's registered.
Tariq misinterpreted a document that had a Y next to the database for registered sex offenders and thought it meant Bay was one, even though it only means the authorities checked that database for his name.
He was showed his intake form, MOSOR, registered lifetime sex offender, yes. And then he would convince his audience that that means that I'm a lifetime sex offender. Well, that's not what that means. You can go on the registry and you can type my name in and you'll be able to find out if I am one of those folks. The guy doubles down and says, oh, if you are fed, you can get it taken off your record. Like, what?
Yeah, he's probably going to have to pay that man. Him spraying lies all over YouTube is going to be a running theme. Y'all should settle in and get used to it. We don't support the Democrat Party. Tariq doesn't support the Democrats for one reason. He thinks they haven't provided anything tangible for FBAs. And he doesn't appreciate how black people are constantly expected to vote for them. The FBA movement actually started as the hashtag Tangibles 2020 movement before he tried to burn ADOS, or the American Descendants of Slaves, organization to the ground so he could shine. In the last election, I pushed my viewers away from Trump because he represents an existential threat to every underrepresented group in the country. I wasn't waving the Kamala flag. I even criticized her, but I did vote for her. She was the only realistic choice if we wanted to avoid Project 2025, which is happening right now. And I told y'all about Project 2025. Nobody listened to me. We dislike the mainstream media. I mean, we both decided to build our own audiences and correct what we see as falsehoods. So it seems like we're on the same page on this one. Disliking all of the mainstream media is necessary when you're attempting to inspire blind loyalty. People who claim all mainstream media is the devil are just proactively protecting themselves from fact checks. We distrust some non-FBA black media organizations. I made a video about how trash the Shade Room is last year. So when Tariq lists off all the publications owned by black immigrants that denigrate us constantly, he's right.
World Star, Shade Room, Gossip, Media Takeout. They come over here and get a bag denigrating us, cherry picking the absolute worst images.
He's using it as justification to denigrate all of them in return, meaning all Caribbean people and all African people, which is immature and short-sighted, but the allegation is true. Tariq doesn't do nuance very well, as we'll get into in the I don't agree with section. We both think there is an unofficial war on black Americans.
These people have waged an unofficial war on us, and that's one thing that we have to do. We have to start calling what they have done to us and what they are doing to us an act of war.
I think, given historical evidence and modern day evidence, it's really tough to argue that this hasn't been the case since slavery ended. Where we differ is that Tariq is using that fact to further justify his incredibly divisive actions and statements towards everyone who isn't FBA. What else do I have in common with Tariq? Anger. I've been angry at this country's power structure my whole life. Boom, we got a non-foundational black YouTube American as well. So I wanted to get a feel for how FBA, how their ideology has impacted you, how it's intersected with you, but also how you've interacted with black Americans throughout your life.
So first I want to give some empathy. I want to start out with that. Essentially, there's a unique experience that the black American growing up next to their colonizers have. It is a maddening experience. To be black is to be mad in the States in particular. The second part is I also empathize with the pain of having to create the gumbo of what you have, because that's all you have. So being that the FBA or the ADOS has only existed and its only lineage has existed in the States this whole time, That's all he got. So he, you know, his claim to his African ancestry and, you know, looking back to see if he's Igbo, if he's Yoruba, like if he's all these different things, that's a little bit too far for him.
Yo, so today, my baby brother sent me my ancestry results. He had to fall on the grenade for the rest of us. RIP his data. I just found out that I'm 32% Nigerian and 14% from Mali. I don't know what you call somebody from Mali. Being American and descended from slaves and knowing that you came from West Africa, but never really being sure which parts or at what time, anything like that, it's a surreal feeling when you find out, right? Because on the one hand, you're pissed off because there's no way for me to have a connection to that continent. I've never been to Africa. On the other side, you're happy because you're grounded in something for the first time in your life, something besides this country that stole your people and forced a religion on you and forced a flag on you and forced you to pledge allegiance to that flag from childhood on, which is weird. We're going to get into the allegiance to the flag FBA does a little later. Everybody who doesn't spend time on the conspiracy side of YouTube, let's cover the basics of the ideology. FBAs, stick with me. I know y'all know most of this, but I can guarantee you that there's some of it you don't. To be clear, we're officially done with things I agree with section. I dislike everything covered in the rest of this video. I owe y'all some proof for a couple of things I said earlier. Here's the official FBA website. I told y'all he built this, and at the bottom it says Foundational Black Americans. Let's throw that joint in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office site, and boom. That's your boy, right? Just in case you needed more proof, the earliest recorded mention of the site's URL happened on October 7th of 2020, when he was trying to sell y'all FBA mini flags. The earliest mention of the term is hard to pinpoint, but he was using it on another one of his sites in 2019. Here's proof of him creating the term in the first place, claiming he adapted it from Dr. Claude Anderson's Native Black Americans term. The FBA movement started as Tangibles 2020 in the lead up to the 2020 election.
Man, we don't need to be on no ADOS, man. We need to be Pan-Africans. That's what Pan-Africanism is. Us fighting for everybody else to come over here and get some of the resources that we've helped accumulate for them. And then they turn around and say, okay, thank you, Wakata. And I'm about to go work for these white people.
Back then, Tariq was in lockstep with the ADOS movement, led by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. ADOS has their own problems. Rapper Talib Kweli penned a Medium article in 2019 called Why ADOS is Trash that included 2 segments that help prove this point. The first is from when ADOS followers misidentified his heritage after he criticized their co-founder Yvette Carnell, saying he's Haitian and telling him to go back. Talib Kweli is from Brooklyn, and his parents aren't immigrants. Stay tuned for them doing that to me 2 weeks ago. The second is about how ADOS, and now FBA, love targeting liberals and progressives like Ta-Nehisi Coates, Kamala, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, and every other critic of Trump because Dems have taken the black vote for granted. That's absolutely true. But Kweli says that when you target Dems like that, you're letting the GOP slide. I agree 100%. Yvette got this rolling when she attacked Talib out of nowhere in 2019. His tweet was pro-reparations and anti-Trump, saying he prefers a plan for reparations over withholding our votes and letting Trump win again. She slammed him for being a loud and wrong celebrity. How? He agrees with you. Oh, wait.
Right. Now, you know that video is deleted.
That, I think, is even more beloved than Tariq Nasheed. I remember people actually being more mad at me that I had Yvette in the thumbnail than Tariq Nasheed. But the thing is, the data is already shown. There's already research that's shown that she is compromised. She does specifically back the MAGA set, not even like conservative, not even conservative with a small c that we know we people that are darker than blue do have. I'm from the Caribbean. I ain't gonna gaslight you into thinking that like I did not grow up in a conservative Caribbean household. Right. I'm not gonna act like I didn't. But no, they're Yvette and Tariq and them was specifically trying to align themselves with the MAGA sect brand. And a lot of it also, if you do like the research and you follow the money, Nazi-backed MAGA sapien type branding. So like, who is this in service of?
Very serious accusation, Potter.
Your evidence?
I appreciate that, Foreign. I was going to have to talk about this anyway. So Yvette served on the board for a group called Progressives for Immigration Reform, which was a fake progressive front organization linked to essentially a Nazi, a white nativist, white supremacist, and eugenics supporter named John Tanton. His goal was to limit black and brown immigration. This organization she served on built websites that accused immigrants of being responsible for things like traffic, overconsumption, and other environmental problems. They've also increased friction between ADOS/FBA and black immigrants, as we're going to show a lot more of in the video. The ultimate goal here is to delay a black or brown majority population in the country for more years. Also, big shout out to Ole for throwing me the alley-oop with this research. We all love you. Thank you so much. Suffice to say, FBA copied most of ADOS' playbook, but made it worse somehow. I gotta show y'all the site for Tangibles 2020 real quick because it supports my prior argument about Tariq selling anything at every chance he gets. First, we hit the homepage and find yet another weird company launched by Tariq called #FirstThem. Their argument is that there's corporate-sponsored movements rising up in the entertainment industry around sexual misconduct, and that these movements are unfairly targeting black entertainers. The site goes on to say that there's allegedly hundreds of accused sexual predators from the dominant society, aka white people, and that they're being skipped over. Okay, so #FirstThem is really them first. Considering this main part of the site was built out in April of 2019, and the Me Too movement popped off over the 2 years prior, that's definitely what he was referring to. Let's see how many high-profile black people were implicated by that movement. 3, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, and Morgan Freeman. 3 out of 9 or so high-profile celebrities, with the rest being white or Jewish. Most of y'all watching this are just now hearing about Morgan Freeman's harassment accusations right now. By the way, he accepted responsibility for it. So it's probably just one of the other 2 that he's caping for. Most of y'all have been watching me long enough to know that I wasn't guessing. Here, he says he's not trying to minimize the actions of R. Kelly after John Legend says Kelly deserves the Weinstein treatment. In the next tweet, he agrees unequivocally that they're on the same page. Kelly deserves to be punished on the same level as Weinstein. 10 days later, he tweets about an unsubstantiated case where a sex offender pretended to be a woman to lure a victim, then quotes himself and implies that R. Kelly ain't that bad in comparison. How are 9 counts of sex crimes and human trafficking not worse than that? I guess I shouldn't expect much from somebody who wrote a Mackin handbook for incels. We'll get to that, I promise. This is the most important part. How we help. Simple. You gotta donate and buy some merch. There are no more specifics about where the money goes. They claim there's volunteer opportunities and fundraising initiatives, but we couldn't find anything to back that up. If y'all need proof that this is Tariq's site, clicking one of these sweaters takes me to a page with Tariq Elite in the URL. It's his personal Shopify account. Don't get whiplashed as I take you back to the #Tangibles 2020 tab, because this is not going to feel like the same site. These are the same talking points we've heard within the black community since before I was born.
We've been neglected by Democrats. They lump us in with other minorities who benefit from it more than we do. And we're not voting unless we get tangibles. Jive, turkey.
I promise I'm taking this seriously. As usual, the only way to get involved is to hit his PayPal. Brief timeout. To organize the rest of this video, we're going to roll out the first 6 of the 10 stages of genocide. Yeah, I put Grift in the title because he doesn't want to get anyone killed. He just happens to be agitating an intraracial war so he can profit from the FBA side while using the same blueprint as some of history's worst dictators. Like, if Hitler was way less persuasive and only concerned with getting enough money to hire models for a music video. Very long story short, he soon fractured off from #Tangibles 2020 and formed FBA, using a lot of the core ADOS principles, reparations, delineation from black immigrants being the main two. In my opinion, he did this because he realized he'd be better off creating and leading his own movement to sell more terrible films and merch to. Another fractured group called Secure the Tribe later broke off of FBA. Because of course they did. We've already covered the definition of FBA, but now we get the backstory behind why they're separating themselves from other people descended from slaves in the Caribbean. The site claims that almost a century before slaves touched down in America, a Spanish colonizer named Lucas Vasquez de Ayllón brought the first documented enslaved people to what's now the coasts of South Carolina and Georgia. This is widely confirmed by the historian community. There were about 100 of them, and a revolt followed weeks after they touched down. There were likely both free and enslaved black people in America before 1619. This article by Dwayne Johnson of the Valdosta Daily Times summed it up best. Apparently, Christopher Columbus wrote some of the potential evidence in his own journal. Columbus said that Native Americans confirmed black people came from the southeast in boats, trading in spears. These spears had the same ratios of precious metals as the spears being made in Guinea, which is in Africa. This is a secondary source, though. We'd need to see and translate that journal, but FBAs, I'm going to give that Harvard historian the benefit of the doubt. The evidence people like Tariq point to most often is the giant Olmec head statues from Central and South America.
Some of the Aboriginal people here look just like us. You go down and see the Olmec statues. You go to California, the Ohlone Indians, the Mojave Indians. I'm talking about jet black people, all on this eastern seaboard, jet black people.
He brings it up all the time because it's hard to beat visual evidence. They're like 11 feet tall and weigh over 30 tons. The explorer who found them, Jose Melgar, said they looked Ethiopic and concluded there had undoubtedly been blacks in this country. Those obviously look like African features, but evidence like this is always debatable. Why couldn't Olmec statues be depicting Olmec rulers? Wouldn't that make sense? Isn't that what most other ancient statues are built for? Africans aren't the only people who look like that, as you can see. The truth is, this is all circumstantial and subjective evidence. We can't know for sure, as much as it feels good for us to believe it. I relate to how validating it is to know that some of our ancestors came here of their own free will. But a mark of maturity in these important discussions is being comfortable with saying the phrase, I don't know. Scientists say it all the time. He never says it's debatable, never says maybe. He not only stated theories as facts, he insulted Native Americans while doing it.
Even though some of our people were from Africa, we were mixed in with the Aboriginal people here. We have to understand that we were here, many of our ancestors were here before Columbus. We're taught that the Native American people are these Indian-looking people with long hair that looks like weaves.
This is the guy whose ideology you want to follow. The guy with 25 sales links in every video description. I counted. His Cash App is in there 3 times. Gets way worse than that. Let's keep going. I already told y'all at least one parent needs to come from a non-immigrant background in America to qualify as FBA. He goes on to say on the site that you aren't considered FBA if your mother and father descend from slavery in the Caribbean.
The Black American has grievances.
Yeah.
The only problem now is how those grievances are then, of course, afflicted onto the wrong, the wrong victims.
100%.
And often folks like myself that have an accent or that, you know, have a Bahamian flag or a Jamaican flag inside their bio or a Nigerian flag inside their bio, that iconography and whatnot means something. And because it's so hard to punch vertically. I'm a fighter, so like I say, it's hard. You ain't got enough reach. Your arms are short, you know, and white supremacy is tall.
Yeah.
You get me? The white institution is a very puissant, towering figure. You get me? So like, you trying to punch up, and you can't reach.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can punch sideways then. I can punch horizontally. And what's next to you horizontally? Black Caribbean people, Africans. You know, like even, you know, you get out of them, Latinos, you see what's going on in LA. So That's and that goes across genders and whatnot too. Like the black man feels invalidated by his experience being in the States, being emasculinized by the white American. And what does he do to take out his frustration with capitalism, with all these other things? He doesn't try to fight that system.
Right.
He fights the black woman.
Yeah.
You know, he fights his partner. That's the problem. Right anger, justified anger. Nobody will ever contend with that. Wrong punching bag.
Okay, to everybody who listens to Tariq or never took African American history in school or had this part conveniently removed from their textbooks, the transatlantic slave trade brought African people from their continent to the Americas and Brazil. Some went directly to the Caribbean, some directly to the colonies, but all were subject to being resold at any time. One of the countries that never gets brought up for buying enslaved people, Canada. Just as an example, Portugal was the most active transporter. That plantation in Brazil was theirs. They were brought to the Caribbean plantations and American plantations and shipped to Brazil and Nova Scotia and anywhere else there was an established trade relationship and demand for cheap labor. Tariq's rules for FBA lineage heavily rely on a separation between those descended from Caribbean slavery and those descended from American freedmen. This rule blatantly and intentionally ignores that people cross between these plantations all the time. Enslaved people were sold off to the Caribbean after working in America because Haiti had high demand, and they were sent there as punishment too, since conditions were reportedly more brutal on those plantations. This is the best part. Lincoln even tried to send these freedmen Tariq wants to focus on to Haiti to get them the hell out of his face. Lincoln did not want a bunch of free Negroes wandering around the U.S. The attempt failed, but a basic review of history would have told you that plenty of people with the exact same ancestry as you ended up on those islands out of sheer chance after putting in work in the States. If your claim for hoarding all the imaginary reparations checks depends on FBAs building the foundation of this country, shouldn't anybody who did that work be included? You'd think so if this was based on logic, but it's not. Even if there were zero significant intersection between slavery in the Caribbean and the founding years of the chattel slavery system in the US, which is categorically impossible, this clown goes on to claim it's easy for all FBAs to find and produce their paperwork in order to qualify as part of the lineage.
So there's some kind of deliberate play going on here. So that's very dangerous. Well, it was dangerous because now we're doing paperwork checks now.
He cites the 1900 census too, since it provided more information, as if some of us weren't displaced or our paperwork lost to time. As if a census conducted in 1870 could ever account for the full extent of the atrocities committed during slavery. As if our ancestors hadn't scattered all over the planet by then. And as if the federal government could ever be trusted to create and operate the entire department it would require to process and verify all these people. How are they going to stop Rachel Dolezal? Ernie's good, but how are they going to stop Kenny Smith? Why would you want the feds to have the power to further classify and exclude huge sections of the black population in the first place? The fuck you talking about? Did you think this through for longer than it takes you to create one of your terrible ass AI thumbnail having ass YouTube videos? Oh, by the way, this is stage 2, symbolization. As we scroll down this page, let's clock all the demeaning and exaggerated ways he's depicted immigrants, as compared to how he depicts FBAs. Indian working at a gas station, bug-eyed Africans, dirty Africans, crazy Jamaicans, etc.
Marcus Vincent Thomas.
Notice the AI version of himself is pristine. This is what Trump would do more often if he knew how computers worked. It gets worse as it goes. He provides rules about the status of half FBAs, saying they can't be taken seriously if their non-FBA parent moved here after 1970, unless they have a verified track record of loyalty and tangible contributions. Y'all might be asking, but Tariq, why would the year matter if their other parent is full FBA? This is when you get hit with the most unserious, unscientific claim on this whole site. The African and Caribbean immigrants before that time frame had a different collective disposition in relation to FBA. Translation, their vibes were off. He goes on to explain that people like Marcus Garvey, who was Jamaican, and Malcolm X, whose mother was from Grenada, are seen as icons to FBAs. After 1970, the FBI's COINTELPRO program sowed division among black organizations. True. And the US government allocated tangible resources to immigrant groups instead of us. Unsubstantiated. He claims this incentivized non-FBAs to collaborate with white supremacists and sabotage FBA progress. Conspiracy theory. By the way, 21% of our black population in the US has at least one immigrant parent. Some of y'all seriously want to see FBA or ADOS on the ballot, which would be like cutting off one of our legs. So white supremacist wet dream. I assume over 99% of black immigrants watching this video were born after 1970, so please tell me if Tariq is right about your disposition towards all of us in the comments. I'm sure he's right about some immigrants. I'm not denying that an individual immigrant can have a negative disposition towards us. The generalizations are a frequent weapon of his though, and I'm sick of that. It's always an invalid argument to reduce a vibrant, multifaceted community down to one person that hurt your feelings on the internet. You don't see me calling everybody on earth named Marcus a divisive narcissist. That's just you, bruh. Congratulations. If you're still watching this, your certificate for FBA 101 is in the mail. Now is vocab time. I'd like to introduce y'all to Tariq's favorite slur.
The tethering, the cultural parasitism in tethering needs to be checked.
Sometimes he pairs it with anchored for extra spice. He has slurs on the site, like the tether and the anchored tether. It's on the site, like
The anchored tether?
anchored tether
And
is
so
what he calls it.
that's what's interesting. It reminds me of incels. You know,
Yeah.
I have a lot of background with like the alt-right research and the alt-right and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these alternative intellectual spaces that lean into toxic habits of, you know, harassment, conspiratorial thinking, antisocial community building, they all are built with the same general like structures and attract the same type of people, disaffected young men, with marginal social, economic, and, you know, romantic opportunities.
Oh yeah.
Looking for community, looking for things to like subsume their identity into.
Yep.
And the development of jargon and coded language and things like that is actually really, really important and valuable to those spaces because it marks who's in and who's out.
And anchor baby is a slur used for the child of an immigrant who came to America and gave birth after, making their child a citizen.
I was born in the States, so technically I do have both passports. Trump hates me. And I lived most of my life in the Bahamas. So like I was just born in the States and then I came right back to the Bahamas. So I'm an anchor baby essentially.
My girlfriend is too.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know, solidarity, you know, but like once I got back to the States for tertiary education, there is a tendency that a lot of people that have not had to live shoulder to shoulder with their colonizers, like Americans do, like Black Americans do, like Indigenous, like a lot of folks that have been maligned by their colonizers, and they look like that. A lot of them, a lot of us immigrants that, because I do consider myself an immigrant in spirit, when we come to the States, we don't have that baggage, so we're able to perform in ways in which our Black counterparts can't, that have been there from time.
Tether takes anchor one step further, since technically those slurs used to mean the same thing. FBAs use tether to describe African or Caribbean immigrants who moved to the U.S. to benefit off of our civil rights struggle, while simultaneously disparaging us. They claim it's an action-based thing, and not prejudiced, and that they don't have beef with all immigrants. You're lying, and I'm gonna prove it. Tether conjures up images of Jordan Peele's movie Us, where it referred to a mirrored copy of each main character that lived underground. didn't speak clearly, were badly groomed, and violent. Basically, him and his followers adopted right-wing white supremacist tactics and throw these slurs at people pretty viciously.
You understand? And you wonder why we delineate? And people talking about we're divisive? We should have divided from these damn dusty-ass, hateful tethers a long time ago.
That time, he was referring to Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland and the only black governor in the country. His beef with Wes started when the governor vetoed a study into reparations in favor of continued action that delivers results for the people we serve. There's been studies commissioned in several states. California is the most liberal state we have, and you know what happened when they studied reparations? They calculated that an older black American would be owed about $1.2 million. Did the math to all the older black people in California and went, nah. West committed to introducing legislation next year to address, quote, racial disparities in areas such as wealth, home ownership, education, and food security, end quote. Politicians lie all the time, so we'll see if he follows through. But the headline here is that he's not this non-FBA tether holding us back from a check that was never coming.
You know, Wes Moore, his family's Jamaican.
Hold up. Wes Moore's father is fully descended from American slavery and likely died due to medical discrimination.
So they don't have the same generational trauma, the direct connection to the reparations claim, the ancestral ties here.
And his grandfather fled the country after his great-grandfather was targeted for lynching. His mother is half Cuban and half Jamaican.
So they can easily dismiss or deprioritize our policies without any type of internal conflict.
Wes is half FBA. Tariq lied on this man's blood to fuel his xenophobia, then said this.
There's a reason why they get these non-FBA tethers.
Slur. He's wrong about Moore's lineage. Lacks the intellectual rigor to fully explore Moore's position on reparations, and uses this opportunity to add dusty and hateful to a word that's already a slur.
For years, my first anti-fan stalker type people that were emailing me and sliding into my DMs and talking about my wife and kids and stuff online and trying to dox me were Tariq Nasheed fans talking about I was really Jamaican. You know what I'm saying? And I still get that. I still get Jamaican.
No, they don't stop.
Because anybody black that disagrees with Tariq Nasheed got to be Jamaican and Nigerian.
I got called a tether immediately as soon as I said anything to them. And I'm like, right. I'm y'all.
Right. I mean, I am from Chicago.
Right.
My grandparents are from Mississippi. Right. The framework of his social analysis and his movement is identical to how white supremacists have built their social movements and frameworks. It's very right-wing. We identify an other. Mm-hmm. We develop, coded language and things like that through which to differentiate, through which to slur. This is the 10 stages of genocide. And this does seem hyperbolic because he does not have the power to commit a genocide.
Right.
However, the framework through which he's organized FBA, just as I read this, you're going to be like, yep. So stage 1 is classification. Differences between people are not respected. Stage 2, symbolization.
Nikki Haley and Tim Scott have really been making this argument out there that America does not have issues with systemic racism, while also bringing up their own individual experiences with racism.
I just think you can't have this both ways. You can't try to sell me on your personal story of upliftment and the fact that you overcame the odds, and then say, but there were no odds. You can't have it both ways.
You debunk your own story.
You're debunking your own story.
It's important to Tariq for y'all to think he doesn't consider all black immigrants to be tethers. He made that clear when he got in a Twitter beef with Luther Campbell, the party rap pioneer, also known as Uncle Luke from 2 Live Crew. Basically, Mr. Doodoo Brown himself accused Tariq of being divisive and a grifter, and sprinkled some "your wife is white" on top.
As a group of black men, and most of them hang out on Twitter, Tariq Nasheed.
Oh my God, I do not like him. I swear, I feel like he's an agent.
Yeah.
One of Tariq's response tweets said this, quote, Luke, all Caribbeans and Africans are not tethers. just the bootlicking ones who act as flunkies for political parties by trying to trick foundational Black Americans into voting for nothing in return. End quote. As I've already made clear, and will provide more examples of, that's bullshit. No matter who you are, he'll insult your homeland. Before we get more examples, we got some more vocab to cover first. Bear with me. I hopped in the live chat of his recent video about non-FBAs co-opting Juneteenth and asked a simple question. What does one flyer have to do with an entire group's activity? Why is everything us and them? You would have thought I called everybody's mama a hoe. First person yell typed erasure with 4 exclamation marks. Another said, I'm talking that tether talk. Next person straight up called me a non-FBA without knowing me at all. Then they blamed their anger on non-FBAs and claims FBAs have always been welcoming. It never ends. Not to mention the wild statements I skipped over. Quote, we are the leaders, they are the followers. I'm tired of African and Caribbean people. Get out of our business and go fix your dilapidated homeland. Black power! Look, fixing America is not my job, but I promise you, I'm trying my best with the skills I have. In case you haven't heard, we're going through a lot right now. White America's 2 dads broke up in the first week of Pride Month. Lilo and Stitch was mid. Tyler Perry's still writing TV shows. Yes, Juneteenth is for us, meaning Native Black Americans, but it was not solely caused by us. The only reason we were able to get to the point where we could have a Juneteenth celebration was because of people like Denmark Vesey. You've probably heard the name before, but you probably didn't know that he was born, raised, and enslaved in St. Thomas in the West Indies. He ended up in Charleston, South Carolina, bought his freedom later on, and planned a slave revolt, mirroring the revolution in Haiti. His plan was to revolt and sail to Haiti before the law could catch up with them after they killed the slave masters. A couple people snitched, and he ended up getting hanged. These are the people y'all want to delineate from. People who worked next to you and plotted escape with you. Some of the FBAs watching this probably took offense to me calling tether and anchor derogatory slurs earlier. They were slurs mostly used towards Latin immigrants before Tariq put them on the official website for your movement. Now they just apply to more people. That's y'all's legacy. Congrats. For a group that claims to be so pro-Black, it's starting to smell real white supremacist in this bitch. I'm not new to this though. When I covered Umar last year, I got called all kinds of coon. But this guy is worse than Umar by a magnitude of 10.
Black political content in social media has been trash for half a generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's been garbage since it came online because it was really birthed under and or into the manosphere. It's a lot of barbershop philosophy,
100%.
a lot of mythology, a lot of conspiracy theories. And it's not even like, oh, you got to have a degree. There's literally just no intellectual rigor.
That's
you know,
absolutely.
And that's why, and like even I'm very critical of Umar, but Umar is Malcolm X compared to Tariq Nasheed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Umar is Michael Eric Dyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like he is Professor Emeritus.
Yeah.
Compared to Tariq Nasheed.
The chat introduced me to another new term that's important for this video. Off-code FBA. That's what they called me once they finally figured out that I'm not an immigrant. See, this is how they label people within their own group who disagree with their ideology, or Tariq's ideology, since he created the code they're referring to. The rest of the terms, y'all know them already.
I inadvertently feed a lot of tethers, niggas, busters, sambos. I feed a lot of these people inadvertently.
For anybody under 40 years old, buster is old Black slang for loser or lame. I wonder which one of these he's going to call me after he watches this video. We got one more vocab word, and that's rider. It's what FBAs use to refer to immigrants who are on our side, who will advocate for us, fight with us. They call Malcolm X a rider, they call Marcus Garvey a rider, etc. But as I've said several times, the insults to these people's homeland disqualifies y'all from using that term.
You can't have this both ways.
Last I check, we could talk about Marcus Garvey, we could talk about Biggie, we could talk about Malcolm X, Grenada. You could talk about so many of these different figures. The Black Negro National Anthem was written by a Bahamian from Florida. There's so many different examples. But, granted, we don't need to talk about that too much. You're Black. I could take pride in it, but I don't need to wield it like a Yu-Gi-Oh card and say, I don't need to do that. And yet again, I come back to empathy because I get it. You need, or you feel like you have to find different qualifiers to bargain and barter for your worth to this experiment, the American experiment. So when you bring up the different Black contributions to the United States, what you're doing is you're at the table and you're trying to negotiate, not with me, but with white supremacy itself, and saying, hey, I have value. Let me in the club. Let me in the club. Stop shooting me. Stop calling me out my name. Treat me as a human being. I've done for you. Please do for me. And unfortunately, as you're seeing, they ain't gonna do it.
It's a losing proposition. I think it always has been, and I've been fighting my kind of doomer tendencies as I write this to be like, y'all, we're not gonna get reparations. Like, y'all know that, right?
I'm not even worried about reparations.
Nah, man.
Because our political education in America among Black people is so bad. Reparations would be such a setup. It would be such a setup, in my opinion, in my limited opinion. And I open myself up to critique from people that actually know better than me.
This pie in the sky kind of hypothetical that ADO shoots for, that FBA says it shoots for, but we'll never actually be able to organize effectively enough to get.
All I think about with reparations is Jay-Z doing Bitcoin in the hood. Like, that's all I can think about is fucking PPP loan nonsense. Like, don't be wrong, it'll be good for some people, but like, it would have to be such a societal restructuring presented to me that I'm like, there's no way we can fuck this up. Versus like a big check for a bunch of grifters to go grab so we can give it to Earn Your Leisure. You know what I'm saying? Boyce Watkins, Jay-Z, and Tariq Nasheed.
All right, it's time for a world tour. This is how the Black immigrant population in America broke down by percentage as of 2021. Let's see what other ethnic groups Tariq insults when one person from that group offends him in some way.
It's not as bad as your failed homeland, where y'all over there beating in the head with hyena legs. It ain't that bad. You're not going to come over here and discuss any of that with us while your homeland is janky, toe down, and raggedy.
Here's a caption where he took an opportunity to insult Caribbean people for no goddamn reason, claiming this statue of an anonymous Black woman in Times Square looks like an immigrant with a fake nursing degree. How are you the racist backlash the headlines are talking about?
They ever talk about a woman with quote unquote multiple husbands? What she basically is, she's a referee for gayness. The dudes are always moist.
Hyphenated Negroes are working in cahoots with the white supremacists against us. These are the Negroes who are Black plus something else. Black lesbian. Black LBGT. They are Black immigrants. They are Black and Creole. They are Black and Jamaican. I've heard that before.
The homophobia during Pride Month is like waiting for Juneteenth to call the cops on a Black barbecue. In that most recent comment, he was trying to say that if you hyphenate your identity with Black, you must be insulting Black people by distancing yourself from being full Black.
That's that intersectionality talk, meaning they're Black, but they ain't Black.
Tariq fundamentally does not understand the concept of intersectionality or racial identity for that matter. How is attaching your sexual orientation to your ethnicity an insult to Black people? How is letting people know you're Creole and Black a bad thing? This is who y'all choose to follow. Whose mans is this? Remember what stage we're in: discrimination and dehumanization. We're moving into that second one when he says,
see, because in their minds, they view themselves different from Black Black Americans. So this is why it's very easy for them to undermine us. These hyphenated Negroes are very dangerous. There's always the main four is the Black feminist, Black immigrant, Black LBGT, Black swirler. You cannot point to anything that immigration has done in the last 40 years, or hell, I go 60 years. Nobody can point to how it has helped Native Black Americans. I keep asking this question publicly. All I get is deflection.
Yolanda Jean, Haitian refugee who participated in the 1993 hunger strike at Guantanamo Bay. America refused to allow HIV-positive people in during the early 90s, and these captives strike nearly wiped them out. After being brought to the U.S. and recovering, she became a powerful voice for HIV advocacy and brought Black Americans up by name on the biggest stage possible.
Moi venu aux États-Unis, moi pas dit que tout Américain c'est même, mais c'est gouvernement américain qui gagne une politique que la mène envers noir, surtout pour haïtien.
Esmeralda Simmons is a child of St. Croix immigrants and has been a New York lawyer for decades. She advocated for equity in public education, voting, policing, and the child welfare system as the center's executive director for 34 years.
Our students are our future. What we need to do is to get involved at the school level and then go to the school district, then expand out to the whole Department of Education. Go to those hearings when they're calling for hearings to express your opinion. Let them know that your school is not working. Let them know whether you want a charter school. Let them know what is going on with your particular students, because your student reflects all the other students in New York City.
Since you said immigrants, Tariq, and not just Black ones, let's get Nihad Awad in here. He's the National Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations and was in the White House to discuss American Muslims a few days after September 11th. Not sure if you knew this, but there's a lot of Black Muslim FBAs.
My stepfather is Nigerian. And I remember some negative experiences. I grew up Muslim at our masjid in Chicago. This was a chosen child, situation, right? And I remember getting really small plates of jollof rice compared to the other kids sometimes and being really upset about that, and not realizing what it was all about until later in life. And let's not act like the FBA-ness of it all has created negative feedback loop, if that makes sense.
The Black Alliance for Just Immigration advocates for both immigrants and Native Black Americans. They spell that out on their site and all promo materials. They provide technical assistance and education to local communities to push for civil rights progress and stop people like you from dividing us further.
Today we have more news in the fatal shooting of an
More news today about the police killing of a local African American woman in her home.
There's literally a campaign under the same parent organization called Black Justice is Our Justice. They're doing more than talking shit on the internet.
Divisiveness is not survival. It's a reaction to pain and betrayal, but it's not a strategy for long-term power. If unity didn't work before, it's not because Black people across the diaspora weren't trying. It's because white supremacy has always deliberately kept us apart. The FBA response, instead of healing that division, is deepening it by turning on the very people who should be allies.
There's a lot more examples than those few. They've always been fighting alongside us in overt and covert ways. Don't let anybody, especially some pseudo-intellectual Negro with a God complex, convince you otherwise. And don't get it twisted, a lot of y'all are convinced. I came across this article in the Los Angeles Times about a Jamaican immigrant named Winsome Pendergrass. She lives in Brooklyn. Her day job is as a private nursing assistant for seniors. And when she isn't doing that, she's demonstrating and lobbying public officials for affordable housing and tenants' rights in Black and brown neighborhoods. She said, quote, "The people who tell me to go back to my country the most are Black people, not white people." She feels this great divide because she's from the islands. The Times ran focus groups with immigrants from the Caribbean and sub-Saharan Africa, and several of them said that the reason they avoid associating with us, meaning FBAs, is because Black Americans treat them more harshly.
When my shift is over, I want to go home to my children, Mangulu, Mungala, and oof, 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 oof. Hi, Noa, Noa. But they like white people, though. They treat y'all like family. As soon as y'all come around, they get excited. Excuse me, Mr. White Man, thank you for bringing us here. We love you. Yay, the white man.
Something that makes your heart beat faster.
Anger.
Huh?
Anger.
Anger. Anger. Anger. Anger.
Like it or not, you from Africa. I'm from Africa, you from Africa, you African booty scratcher.
Many FBAs are perpetrating the same hateful and discriminatory experiences you complain about. As an example, here's what happened to Winsome one day on a crowded city bus during Trump's first term. A Black man refused to make space for her when she tried to sit, and they exchanged words. A Black woman was all up in their business, picked up on her accent, and jumped to an assumption Tariq would make. The woman said, quote, "I can't wait till Trump runs them back home. Let them go back to their country," end quote. Winsome asked her if she was talking to her, and the woman doubled down. Quote, "Yes, Trump's gonna run you out," end quote. I don't think I need to point out the Jedi mind trick that will convince any Black woman that Trump's on their side in any way. There's not a single action he's undertaken that's designed to benefit us. And he also happens to be a self-supremacist who surrounded himself with white supremacists. Tariq's mentality is making this happen. Keep watching if you think I'm exaggerating or giving him too much credit. We're not done with this world tour. He had plenty to say about the LA protests earlier this month, namely that FBAs shouldn't care about immigrants unless they're sleeping with them.
Isaac came, got all these people. This ain't it. Really, brother? What you crying for? He must have took his little senorita. They done took some pussy away from this nigga.
I said I was going to let my opinions be known about the protests, and I can't be any clearer than this. Caring about other people is the only thing that makes society function. It functions in spite of callous capitalists who see entire groups of people as labor they can exploit, and former fake pimps like Tariq who see women as a collection of holes they can use. If ICE is allowed to deport undocumented people and those with protected status with no due process, which is what they're doing, nothing stops them from hitting every other class of citizen next. Our government can and will justify anything they're allowed to get away with. And protesting is about making sure they can't establish legal precedent, which is how our entire legal system works. They literally detained a green card holder, Mahmoud Khalil, and are trying to deport him right now because he criticized the genocide in Palestine. They're using a Cold War law saying he's adverse to America's interests. What happened to the First Amendment? Y'all talking about stay home. We're so cooked. I shouldn't have to do the whole "they'll eventually get you" speech, but it seems like basic human decency is in short supply in the 50-year-old high school dropout turned fake pimp turned rapper turned hotep grifter demographic.
Now, you want people to shed blood, to exert crazy amounts of energy, to put themselves in danger, to come together now because you're in the hot seat. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put myself in danger. I don't want my son to put himself in danger.
I'm done with these content creators, bro. I was about to say something rude, but I respect most of my elders, as long as they're not as asinine as Tariq.
Right now, the people are protesting in California, and I keep seeing on Twitter, Black people don't go. And it's like, all right.
Yeah.
You know, y'all keep trying on Twitter. I know what the protest looks like. It don't look like what y'all are trying to do on Twitter, but you know, get your likes, get your clout up.
I'm not even gonna cuss this time. Tabitha, I hear your concerns. I hear you when you say you don't want to put yourself or your son in harm's way. But where we diverge is your reasoning. I don't know you, but judging from the tone here, you weren't gonna do anything anyway. Y'all make money from these people watching your work, just like I do. Who are you trying to influence and why? To me, it's about where your line in the sand is. And I'm talking to all FBAs now. If you think this chalk outline around only your community is an effective strategy, I'm going to remind you what chalk outlines are typically used for. The people protesting for Americans from Latin countries right now are also protesting the lack of due process. That affects Tabitha, her son, and you. If you don't have an alternative to fighting for all people's rights, we don't need to listen to your complaints about who we choose to advocate for. What's the end result of this FBA-centric strategy? What's your end game? More Tabithas with their auntie glasses talking trash into a cell phone, trying to rewind the tape on the civil rights movement as long as it's not our rights getting deleted. If that sounds fine to you, I'm here to tell you it won't work. The GOP will use these precedents to push even further into more marginalized groups. We are next. I'm going to address our extreme polarization more later, but I want y'all to think about that while we cover even more of Tariq's world tour. He said this to an Indian caller who called him racist after that caller said America was his homeland.
You built some shit that failed, sir. Your homeland has cows and shit on the street, sir.
The caller calls him out for generalizing and brings up Diddy as an example. Since Diddy obviously doesn't represent all FBAs, I could give you 100 tries and you would never guess what Tariq says after that.
Since you're telling me all these people are representatives of the Indian community, Diddy is a representative of you. He's a rich black dude from America.
Okay. I'll take success over people making bushmeat and goop scoops. Okay, yeah, okay. That I don't know what kind of insult that is.
You're straight up racist, dog.
How? Well, he's not running a sex code. He had a freaky ass Filipino chick that liked to get peed on. So yeah, the trial is bogus.
The sexual text messages she was forced to read out loud in court made up one day of testimony out of several that also included violence and coercion from Diddy.
And the fact that you're sitting up here agreeing with the feds shows that you are a colonized cancer to our culture.
Notice how he conveniently ignored that this man kicked the shit out of her on tape in favor of calling him rich. This is another case of Tariq taking things he couldn't possibly know for sure and running with it to make a woman look bad. If you think that's the worst he's ever gotten, I'll wrap it up with this tweet to the co-founder of ADOS, Yvette Carnell, from Christmas Day of 2019. He called her a hoe, insulted her sexual identity by saying she has penis envy, said she wears a dirty dildo, and called her a hoe again, just in case you didn't see it. On Christmas, imagine your daddy is calling some woman a hoe on Twitter when you open in your presents.
He's also handing out bedwench awards. You can find that here on YouTube. He does it on Twitter, calling black women bedwench, a term from the slave plantation. The institution of slavery relied on the forced reproduction in order to produce more capital through the births of black bodies or black children. So violent to take a term that was used by the slave master against black women that they were using to breed and throw that at black women in the 21st century.
My girlfriend and I just celebrated our first anniversary. As we enter our second year together, I still can't believe how fortunate I am that she's in my life. She was born in America and spent several of her early years in Ethiopia, a country with a proud culture and a very vibrant immigrant community here in Atlanta and beyond. Amharic, or Amharinia, was her first language, and she spent most of her life here at this point. The knowledge that Tariq has poisoned the culture to the point where she's felt unwelcome at times pisses me off. This is deeply personal, and if I have to walk through every angle of what makes this dude a loser to drive the point home, it is what it is. Baby, I know you're watching this, I love you. And I'll clarify that in her case, it's mostly online. We get along in real life, for the most part.
And I saw like getting thousands of likes and hundreds of retweets. I was just like, wait, hold on. Is this just a small underground section of people? And then like I saw people interacting with it, and I was just like, hold on, this don't make no sense. I don't feel like these are that many people. And then you look into the likes, and then you look into the reposts, and then you go to these profiles, and then you see something even more pernicious. A lot of these ain't real. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, sorry, I have to drop it. This thing that we be doing online is the same thing with the gender wars. You don't have that really happening like that in real life. Black Americans and the rest of the black diaspora have gotten along. Now, are there transgressions between Black Americans and the rest of the Black tribe? Sure. Do Black Americans come up to me and go say, "Hey, what up, man? Big up yourself." Do they do that? Sure. Sometimes I do a little bit of a boxing, and and we go back and forth with that. We roast, That's what happens amongst colleagues. That's fine. That's cultural diffusion. I ain't getting mad at that. It is what it is.
Many of these immigrants, they get online and start openly criticizing us, talking about we lazy, ungrateful, we ain't got no culture, as they cosplay as us.
He pretends to be selective in who he roasts, but in reality, being selective requires maturity and restraint. Bruh, you've clearly never exercised either one. Now, Tariq is not the first wannabe leader to think having a massive following makes him Malcolm X. Full disclosure, Tariq has not achieved his goals in the organization stage. He is not capable of leading an intramural basketball team, much less leading a disparate group of his peers and followers to the promised land of reparations. How do I know this? The utter disaster known as the FBA Conference in the year of our Lord 2020 AD. This is the best part because I get to bring Yvette back. Remember her? ADOS leader, MAGA hat wearer, fellow misguided movement organizer. Yeah, she eviscerated this man's conference better than I ever could.
This conference was held at a COVID hospital, a COVID-19 hospital, and there's only a few hashtag FBA conferences. People weren't really proud of that thing. They didn't really hashtag it. And you'll see people taking pictures. Tariq ain't got on the mask in a bunch of the pictures. Boyce had a mask on at first, then took it off when he was talking to Judge Joe Brown. Everybody did everything they wanted to do, and it didn't make no sense. Doors opened at 3 p.m. It didn't start until around 6, I'm told.
I'm putting her dissing Tariq in this video because I enjoy when two wildly erratic, super wrong people tear each other apart. Like Trump and Elon.
You have to understand the con that he pulled on y'all.
First, a little background. ADOS threw a conference at some point during that period from 2019 to 2020, where Tariq was actively beefing with them. And it was actually well done. I can't co-sign anything that was said there, but the visuals were legit. It was in a humble venue, like a black church, but they packed that joint out for way less than 6 figures. Tariq ran off with the bag on y'all. He raised $118,775 American dollars from you, his loyal followers on Indiegogo. This trailer feels gross. Since when did we claim the flag like this? FBAs adopting the flag in their bios and names as some fake counter-protest about how this is our country is noble on paper, but we all know the implications of an American flag in your profile on Twitter. Automatic block, do not follow.
But then he's now pivoting towards a nativist, foundational Black American rhetoric that attunes itself or attaches itself to the American flag. Y'all are some curious ass Negroes that really just are very invested in ahistorical takes.
You're subscribing to alt-right iconography and claiming it's different when you do it. The description for the event gave us one of my favorite word salads. Quote, FBAC 2020 will also feature think tank forums that will brainstorm on solutions for a foundational Black American agenda. Who throws a conference without an agenda? You trying to sell tickets for hundreds of dollars to a brainstorming session? We could have done that shit on the internet. How did he use all that money? He booked the Georgia World Congress Center for 3 hours after promising that this conference would be popping.
We're going to have something like Revolt. Well, let me just say, Revolt had a 3-day conference. You did 3 hours. This man talked y'all into going to a mixer. That's his stage. This was the ADOS conference stage. And I'm about to put them up side by side because people don't understand. Compare these two stages. You tell me which one. You tell me who got it popping and who didn't. What is this? Who are y'all following? Sometimes you got to tell the truth and shame the devil. Sometimes you got to shine the light on the lie. Is that popping? Was he popping? Then nobody know why they was there, why they came, and nobody left with anything. And that's why you didn't see a whole lot of FBA hashtagging. I don't understand. I don't understand how you allowed yourselves to be taken advantage of like this.
Speaking of taking advantage of, y'all gave him over $1 million to build the Hidden History Museum, which, to his credit, he built. It exists. He made this tacky, self-promoting reality TV style promo, had Vivica Fox come to the premiere, and then took all the profit from the Hidden History Museum for himself? Where's the money, Tariq? Where's it going? Y'all give him money for all his projects, and then he flips it into an income-generating machine for himself. He has a Melanoid Nation Foundation that's probably done one genuinely good thing in all the years it's been in operation, which is give backpacks to some local kids. Beyond that, there's no track record of any of these fundraisers actually making a difference or ending up in a result that has benefited FBAs. Let's get specific. Let's start with Olu Stevens, a judge who got suspended for 90 days without pay for taking a stance against systematic unfairness. Now, pay attention to the wording in this GoFundMe. He raised $17,470 from y'all, and what he said the money is going to is spreading the word of all the work that he's done in the community and showing our appreciation. It does not say that money is going to Olu Stevens for back pay to cover that 90 days. It says it's for spreading the word. Y'all paid him to talk. Maybe this next one's gonna hit. Helping Hands for Haiti. Sounds great, right? Very striking picture. He raised $9,151 from y'all. Said he's going back to Haiti this week and needs access to clean water. And they're going to establish long-term and immediate outreach assistance. For long-term, he's meeting with contractors and he's going to be building homes. Sounds incredible. Here's the video of him handing out portable water filters to random people on the street in Haiti who probably don't even know what they're grabbing right now. You made a film about them, then didn't follow through on your promises for what the money donated to that and the film packages and the products were for. I don't know where this money went. We'd love to know though, Tariq. This is the best one. Support FBA Reparations for a Juneteenth celebration in DC. He raised $56,191, exceeding his $50K goal from 1,700 of y'all. Again, what's the purpose of this money? Ultimately, he's using this money to pay for a concert. Guest speakers, activists, and musical acts. He raised all that money to pay them and to set up the display, the lights, the stage, all these things, media promotion, travel and lodging for featured guests, and talent and lecturer fees are the main place that this money went. Just like all his films, just like every event he's ever been a part of. He's an event organizer. He's a party promoter. He's not actually doing anything to benefit you. A rally is just a rally. All he ever does is set up agendas and set up rallies and talk a lot. Every dollar you've ever given him has either paid for somebody famous to come speak, come perform, or to set up the displays for the things he uses to dazzle. This is Grifter 101, and I honestly don't understand why people haven't seen it yet. Here's what happened when he spoke at a reparations town hall in California.
Much respect to all the brothers and sisters here in the Bay Area, first of all. I want to make 3 quick points about reparations and then let our other brothers and sisters speak. First thing, we have to understand we have to focus and keep the emphasis on it being lineage-based. The problem is we see a lot of trick bag language being mixed into it where it opens the floor for other groups to come in and undermine us. Reparations in the form of lineage-based compensation is not a compensation for racism. Let's be very clear. If we open the door to racism, Hispanics can come in, Asians can come in, Middle Eastern people can come in. It will become affirmative action again, where we are left holding the crumbs and everybody else is holding the cake.
This is not YouTube. You don't get to greet the live stream and open with xenophobia. There's no AI thumbnail to back you up, bruh.
With the
Thank you,
Homestead
sir.
Act. Okay.
Thank you so much for your comments
thank you so
this
much,
morning.
No, seriously, this is who y'all want leading your movement? Really?
If Tariq was as revolutionary as he purports,
yeah,
they would have killed him from time. FBI and thing would have killed him from time, the same way that they did the rest. But because his rhetoric and his movement is in support of the system that exists, he's been allowed to run with impunity. He is not revolutionary. What he is saying is not pushing against the status quo, and he's not doing anything that threatens the power structure in any way, shape, or form. That's the reason why it hasn't retaliated against him.
He ran a disinformation campaign against N'Cobra, claiming they've been around since the 60s and haven't done shit. N'Cobra was founded in 1987, has chapters throughout the US, Ghana, and in London, has a board of directors, 9 national commissions for economic development, human resources, legal strategies, legislation, information and media, membership and organizational development, international affairs, youth and education. Formed a 501c3 corporation to back a legal defense, research and education fund. Believes all Black people of African descent in America deserve reparations, and defines reparations as changes in or elimination of laws and practices that allow them to be treated differently and less well than white people. That's the tip of the iceberg of what they've done.
What the fuck are you gonna do? What are you doing? Organize your people.
This is what happens when a fake revolutionary meets a real lack of organizational skill. How do you successfully produce, distribute, and market movies, but can't throw a multi-day conference? Oh yeah, because there was no money to make on the other side of this conference without a lot of hard work. And your films are ass. Most of his polarization work takes place on YouTube these days, but he was able to build that following for a reason. Tariq is best known for his work on 8 independent documentaries: Hidden Colors 1 through 5, 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, Buck Breaking, and Microphone Check. All of them have verifiable history within them, and all of them have plenty of inaccuracies and unproven conspiracy theories too.
Jesus ain't gonna say, pull your dress down, come in off the street, go clean up the house. You know, Jesus ain't gonna tell them that. And if he do, they ain't gonna listen to that.
I had to watch him for this video, and at times it's like if your aunties and uncles' dinner table gossip got swapped in for your world history class syllabus.
Alessandro de' Medici, who was a ruler in Italy, you look at pictures of him, this dude looks like Ryan Leslie. So you could see that African bloodline running through a lot of these people.
I know what it takes to produce a short film. No matter what level of production you're at, that shit is difficult. I know many people in the FBA community consider these to be important cultural productions. I've even seen that some parents show them to their kids as if he made Roots or something. If these films weren't so damaging to the culture, I'd be more empathetic in my criticism. Tariq's secret is his established relationships with academic heavyweights and Black celebrities. They need press too. It allows him to maintain and expand his credibility as he spouts off theories next to people who've studied this their whole lives, and others who are obviously freestyling.
Really, when women are taught, or women and men, but when you're taught as a female that...
A quick note on men who use the word female, like Tariq can't stop himself from doing. Female is an adjective used to describe the female member of whatever species. We already have a word for a female human. It's woman. Stop saying that shit. You sound stupid.
When you're taught as a female that God and Jesus is white, you're going to look at whites as somewhat of a savior figure. And you're going to look at the men in your life a little differently.
Try to just work on that more. We need to stop going to church.
The thing is, I don't think any of these respected interviewees are aware of what a monster this dude is on social media. If they heard about him calling Yvette a hoe, throwing slurs out left and right, and insulting the homelands of the same ancestors they're discussing in the film, I feel like he wouldn't be able to pull this off anymore. These are essentially YouTube videos consisting of a bunch of interviews strung together with occasional graphics sprinkled in between that he paid somebody to make. I'm not even knocking him for that. I make YouTube videos too. But let's relax with the acclaimed filmmaker treatment. Every one of the Hidden Colors films is worse than the last, somehow. Like, I expected them to get better over the years, and it just didn't happen. It would take a whole separate video to break down all the falsehoods, and other people have, so that doesn't seem necessary. I'll link that above. He sold them as mixtapes, essentially, and screened them in theaters, and he hit the right era, the right time where you could hustle those and make a ton of money off DVDs and So he really hit it big off being one of the early pioneers in just, this is YouTube. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's timing. But he's not a good filmmaker. And so I have to show people that.
Don't forget the pimp stuff, though.
Yeah, no, that's a whole chapter, bro. Right. Now, there's plenty of positive reviews of these films. I've found most of those positive reviews to be void of substance. So I'm showing you negative reviews because they're fact-based. And it proves that there's things this documentary just got wrong. This first one says it's a really terrific piece of fiction. And what they zoomed in on was saying that Black people were the founders of classical music, or that we invented the piano, things that have been clearly disproven. This second review doubles down on that, specifically on the point that Black people created the piano. We just didn't. It was Europeans, and that's fine. Black people around the globe have achieved incredible things, and we deserve a lot of credit. But this film takes that credit from other cultures on a regular basis. Note that isn't a white conspiracy to erase his legacy. The films are just amateurish and lack fact-checking. He was actually an associate producer on one of Spike Lee's films, but that reinforces the fact that paying for other people to make stuff is clearly where he works best. Color grading and editing are very clearly well beyond his capabilities. Y'all also paid for him to make these and sell them back to you. Buck breaking is the one I really want to focus on, though. This petty-ass, conspiratorial, ugly piece of anti-queer propaganda focuses on connecting the horrors of slavery to the perceived rise in homosexuality among Black men.
Like, because I guess AI wasn't out yet. So he clearly had people from Fiverr just draw him pictures of weird race, slavery, sex. And he would put it right next to, like, historical art.
Exactly.
And it's like, no, this was done by a Austrian.
Yeah.
This is done by somebody in Croatia for $3.
Exactly.
And put it in your documentary.
It's clearly an agenda. If you have two eyes in your head and you're able to see, you can see that it's an agenda, and it's an agenda to decrease our population.
See, LGBTQ is like a political party, like the Democrats or the Republicans. So if you're Black, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a Democrat. You could be an independent or a Republican.
A buck is usually a term that refers to a male of any species that gets hunted by humans. It's usually a deer or something, but Roland from the Lost World Jurassic Park, one of my favorite movies of all time, called the male T-Rex a buck too. During slavery, male slaves that were particularly rebellious or shining too much were punished by being whipped, tortured, sexually assaulted, and more. Often that practice was nothing more than a welcome to the plantation move to assert a slave owner's dominance. Historians debate whether there were that many cases in America as compared to the Caribbean plantations, but the fact remains that it happened. This abomination of a film takes that fact and extrapolates it to be the foundation of homosexuality and overt femininity in Black men.
The gaslighting is to an unreal level. At one point, Nasheed appears on camera to talk about Stonewall, and he describes Stonewall as a Black riot. He completely leaves out the fact that it was Black queer people at a gay club that was being raided because the police consistently raided these gay clubs. This is who started the riot, Marsha P. Johnson. He wants you to see Marsha P. Johnson as just a Black person. He does not want you to acknowledge that Marsha P. Johnson was a queer trans woman.
It's basically a standard Black barbershop conversation featuring all the greatest minds of our time. Documented anti-queer TV personality and your dad's favorite fake judge, Joe Brown, rapper and infamous podcast host Lord Jamar, anti-Semitic, anti-vaccine, and anti-queer conspiracy theorist, and Nation of Islam member Rizza Islam, comedian Corey Holcomb for some reason, a bishop because we all know religion loves queer people, and King Flex himself.
And when he first made it on the scene, he was definitely a pimp. Didn't he even have a show on MTV calling himself K-Flex?
I think I've made my point, but he's not getting off the hook for playing a pimp to sell books to incels for several years. I cannot say it enough times. Dog, this man hates women. If you ask Tariq, he'll tell you these books, and I do mean books plural, are just jokes. I got proof that they aren't, because I read one. Even though I have made many humorous observations throughout the chapters, the contents in this book are very serious and they are extremely effective. A lot of this information will benefit women directly and indirectly because I give men tips on elevating themselves, verbally and sexually, which in turn helps them satisfy women better.
The thing that blows my mind is that they let this dude go from pimp to hotel. I mean, I know why. It makes sense if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, but
You're
on its
right.
face, it seems like it's something that should not be possible.
Only a man can do that.
You know, only a man can do it.
Why is he qualified to teach you how to Mack? Apparently, he's Macked thousands of women over the years. Y'all want to see some of these tips? Here's how he classifies women. If a woman puts up objections, in other words, asserts her right to bodily autonomy by saying no, he has a playbook for that too. Direct quote, if she says, I have a rule that I normally don't do it on the first date, you say, using rebuttal level 1, I like a woman who is spontaneous. I don't like girls who hold on to prerequisites about doing what they feel. I like a spontaneous woman because spontaneity is a sign of maturity. And maturity in a woman is sexy to me. And a woman who is mature enough to do what she wants to do, when she wants to do it, is very sexy to me. Ladies, interrupt me at any time if it's getting too sexy in here for you. He lists off the top 5 objections men should absolutely take heed to. And you'll notice that no ain't on there. In his world, a no is simply an opportunity to convince you. His magnum opus from this chapter of his life, based on what I was able to find, is a passage he denied writing on a live broadcast of the Lonzo and Dusty Vision show in 2023.
The purpose of writing that middle school and high school girls, when you look at them at that age, that you can tell that they're going to be potential whores.
All right. Nobody. Take
He
your
wrote
answer.
that in the art of macking. In the art of macking.
No, you're alive. Man, you're trolling. You were trolling the other day.
I have the book. Quote, there are many contributing factors that make women want to become whores. And in most cases, these females are whores long before the pimp gets to them. If you look at the way these middle school and high school girls dress and carry on in different cities across the country, you can see the ones that are potential whores. This has more to do with their upbringing than the intervention of the pimp. In many cases, it's the girl's family that turns her out, so to speak. The pimp comes along after the fact to at least give her some guidance in her unfortunate profession. This is who Tariq Nasheed still is. He has not evolved. Yeah, he changed his middle name to Allah because of course he did. You can tell him a documented fact about something he did or said, and he'll call you a troll, say you're arguing in bad faith. That's his favorite line. He emailed me that shit. And you know who that reminds me of? Donald Trump and every other dictator ever. The next logical step after a loyal FBA watches a video like this is that they accuse me of slandering my fellow black man and ask me why I didn't invite him on. Or why don't you debate Tariq? That'll clear it up. No, it won't. He's a habitual liar. Lying is his native tongue. What you've just watched is the most organized and thorough breakdown of everything Marcus Vincent Thomas has perpetrated on our people. And there's hours worth of transgressions I had to leave out. I'm not here to diss him all day. I'm here to send a message. The black community has been deeply hurt and abused and betrayed and insulted by both white people and, yes, plenty of individual immigrants. These slights he chooses to zoom in on actually happened.
Black America has set the tone for the world culturally. And I won't dispute that in any regard. And I get how it feels, yet again, to see that stolen, to go on TikTok and to see a palm-colored pasty, white chalk-looking fella rap lyrics, mouth lyrics with the N-word in it, and have Ian and Post Malone adorn blackness like a costume and take it off when it sees fit. I'm mad for you. That's what they've been doing from time. When they've been taking your gold and taking your resources, they did that to me too. You shouldn't be mad with me. We should all focus ourselves on the institution itself.
The problem is That righteous anger you feel is being diverted from white supremacy and aimed at those standing next to you in the streets. The ones who've been here literally the whole time.
You're starting from a genuine place of hurt and agreement. If I sit down with Tariq Nasheed, we're going to agree that black situation in America is up and something needs to be done.
Exactly.
But then he's going to start breaking down blood quantums and eugenics, you know? And I'm going to be like,
Exactly.
I guess that was the end of that moment of connection. He's the Michael Jordan of grifted.
He is a master.
He is a master of this shit.
We aren't the only country reacting to a perceived threat in the form of our immigrant family. But if we don't recognize the real threat, we'll be the first to backslide into authoritarian rule at this scale.
Them slums and shanty towns that people live in, and the slop and bushmeat and goop scoops that they eat. Because see, a lot of people from different parts of Africa who come over here, they'll try to project their own insecurities onto us.
So we've walked y'all through 6 stages of genocide. There's 4 more: preparation, persecution, extermination, and denial. Like we said before, he's not equipped to carry out the rest of these, but there is one that he has a lot of practice in, and we've already shown you.
All we do, a lot of times, we just post videos and images from their homeland. A lot of times I don't even put real captions on them. I'm like, hey, what's this guy's eating?
Take
He
your
wrote
answer
that in the art of macking. In the art of macking.
No, you're alive. Man, you were trolling the other day.
He's inspired copycats. Just look at the Black Alpha Network.
First off, I gotta give a shout out to all of my foundational black Americans, okay? The whole reparations generation, let's make that clear. And there's one thing for certain, and that is, they not like us. Never have. Damn, it feel good. Don't it feel good to wake up every day in the land that your ancestors built, not immigrated to, not fled to. See, our ancestors didn't have to jump no borders.
Tariq Nasheed is the ops. He's a tool of white supremacy and a deceptively effective manipulator who's concerned only with enriching himself. He's following the same path as the failed dictators he's emulating, unleashing slurs and hate speech on people who look just like us to consolidate his own social and financial capital. Do not delude yourself. People who are this mad and irrational online are only pretending to like their immigrant coworkers and acquaintances in real life. As I showed you with Winsome Pendergrass's example, these feelings don't dissipate when they leave their keyboards. We're at the precipice of extremely dangerous terrain. And if we don't cut the head off this snake as one people, hate crimes are next in line. Apathy only feels like strength through the warped lens of bitterness. Your pain is genuine, but you're following a bullshit artist. Y'all got the information now. Can't say I ain't tell you. That was a long one. Appreciate y'all watching. If you're listening to me speak right now, you sat through at least an hour, and that's love, man. I started this to try to do a little bit of good in the world, and I literally can't do that without y'all, without y'all's continued attention, without y'all's continued engagement. This is the longest gap between videos I've ever had because I had to put my foot in this bitch. I'm exhausted, but grateful that I'm able to do this.
The change will have to be in it'll be a slow process. It'll be environmental.
He's been doing this for years. 2,400 videos?
You have to know where you're from in order to know where you're going. You have to know your history. You have to know the people who have fought for you, and never ever forget that.
This better be 90 minutes.